This conference will now be recorded.
Morning.
Yep. So it's all on you now, Magistra.
Okay, I'm ready for the presentation. I have all the info in there. All right, so if you can just go to the next slide, the first one really. So if you don't know me, I am Natalie Roy. I teach in Baton Rouge, Louisiana at Glasgow Middle School, and I teach a class called Roman Technology. This lesson is from a class that I developed to teach all kinds of technology through the lens of STEM. So our classes focus on science, technology, engineering, and math, but through the lens of the ancient Roman world. So each lesson that I teach is a hands-on lab in which we attempt to recreate the daily life of the Romans through experimental archaeology. There is no Latin required for this class because I feel like the subject of Latin is almost, in a way, limiting. Why should only Latin students be able to study the ancient classical world? I think all students should have a chance to study the classical world, without having to worry about the language. So this is kind of like an archaeology class. Next slide, please. I'm just going to go ahead and get some details out of the way now. If you'd like to contact me later because you have questions about anything you hear today, you can email me there at Fabricatrix. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Magistra Roy. I share almost all solely content on Roman technology, although I do some myth maker stuff because that is another class that I teach in which we integrate STEAM into the concepts of the ancient classical mythological world. Next slide, please. So I always get asked these questions, and I'm just going to go ahead and get these out of the way now. If you're interested in doing more on this topic, I have some articles and videos and websites linked throughout. And I'm sure that Magistra Kubicek is going to be able to share this with y'all later. That's perfectly fine, but you can look through these books. There's an article called Ancient Catapults, and that was really, really helpful. We do all kinds of warfare type experiments in my class, and another one that we're really interested in before the pandemic was whistling bullets. And these are slingshot bullets that had holes in them that would whistle when they flew through the air. And they think that that was probably simply a terror tactic. It's quite fascinating. There is a website, a reconstruction of Vitruvius's scorpion. I'll talk more about that in the presentation, but you'll definitely want to come back to that. And then last but not least, Trajan's Column, a great article by National Geographic. You might be able to see it free now with the pandemic, but that's possible. There's also this wonderful book called Many Weapons of Mass Destruction, and you see a picture of it there. There are actually 3 catapults featured in this book that are simple to build. We've built them all. The one you see here on the cover does not work as well as the one that you're going to build today. So just keep in mind that if you do build this one that you see, make sure that you have old school, large clothes hangers, clothespins that you see there, not the little cheap ones that you might buy at the dollar store. Next slide. So I have a challenge for you JCL students out there. I know that I am a former state chair in Louisiana of JCL, and I know that there was always a publicity contest. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure there's probably still a publicity contest going on. And I have a great challenge for y'all. You will want to research the Maker Faire movement. If you've never heard of the Maker Faire, you should check it out. Just go Google it. It is an amazing organization. It's a national organization that organizes fairs throughout the United States. Your city can become one. It may already be one. And they pick one day, usually a Saturday every year, in which they host a Maker Faire. If you're not familiar with the Maker movement, you might just want to Google Maker movement, but it is a movement not just in education, but also just in the regular world in which people enjoy making things and sharing what they've made. At the past 2 maker fairs that we've had in Baton Rouge, my Roman technology students volunteered to do a booth. And at this booth, we helped each visitor to the booth, which was located at the main library in our city. So a lot of people visited this booth. A lot of people came to the fair. Thanks, Craig. And we had people walking up and actually making ancient Roman concrete in little mini containers that they were able to take with them. But I'm challenging you instead to have a booth in which you build mini catapults with people. You will see today that the catapult we're going to build is super simple, it's not dangerous, and it's really fun. You can also, and I'll show you how to do this at the end, you can also take the popsicle sticks that you use and make stickers for them that say, you know, NJJCL, or study Latin, or promote Latin, or whatever you want to do. And that way you've got an instant promotional object that you can give to someone that's not only just something they're going to throw away or put in a folder, they're actually going to play with it. And I think that is a really good way to engage people, not only children, but also adults. So that is my challenge for you today. And by the end of this presentation, you will know a lot about catapults, or just enough to be dangerous anyway. And you will be able to do this project, okay? Next slide. So let's just start with the basics. Catapult. A catapult is from the ancient Greek word, actually two, kata, which means against, and pelein, a verb that means to hurl or yeet, as y'all say. It is a generic term used to describe many different siege weapons which hurl things at an enemy. Okay, so you see one pictured here called an onager. The Romans did not invent catapults. That was probably another culture, maybe the Greeks, but they did adapt them beautifully. And as with much technology in the ancient Roman world, you're going to see brilliant adaptations. And those are the things we tend to study in my Roman technology class. We'll talk about this onager, which I have a model of later on in this talk. Next slide, please. All right, so I always get the question from my students of, you know, what did they hurl? And this part of the presentation, we're going to kind of talk now about the evidence for catapults. So a big part of my class in my Roman technology class is to always discuss the sources for information that we know. That is a big part of this social studies curriculum in the United States right now, but also the science curriculum is to know your sources, know how we know things. Where does this information come from? And I think that's a super important skill for y'all to have right now in the news, okay? I mean, you never know who's sharing what when you read an article. You should always look at the sources of that article. So we're gonna look at some sources now. And one of the sources for catapults is things that they actually hurled with them. If you look at the picture you see here, these are actual catapult shots fired at Masada, of course, which is in it's in Israel, one of the sites that the Romans conquered in first century or second century CE. They sometimes, and if you look at the size of those shots, I mean, that is a full-size woman sitting on them. They were gigantic. We'll talk more about that in a moment. They sometimes hurled body parts, unfortunately. This was a terror tactic, and some of you may have read Julius Caesar. If you've read book 5 for the AP curriculum, you would know that there was a kind of no man's land set up at the very end when they were trying to get Vercingetorix. And this is the kind of situation where, you know, they would get hostages, and if the Germans or the Helvetians or whoever weren't doing what they wanted them to do, they would start killing people and use their heads to actually hurl in these catapults. They would also hurl things like giant pots of oil, and sometimes they could set these on fire. As you can imagine, this would wreak havoc in the place where they shot it into. It could catch houses on fire, buildings, whatnot. So they were really weapons of terror. Next slide, please. So again, let's look at some more evidence for catapults. In literature, Vitruvius is the go-to guy for a lot of technology, and he did not disappoint with this one. He wrote a long description of the Roman Scorpio, which is a type of catapult. It is seen there in the picture. This is a modern interpretation of it. And most likely he knew so much about these devices because he had been a Scorpion operator in the Roman army. And if you're interested in, learning more about specifically the Scorpion, then you'll definitely want to go to his specifications, which are listed here in Latin. That is something you could actually try to read in Latin. It's long and it's quite complicated. It's very mathematical, but it's interesting. There's also a video here of one, and we're not going to play that now, but you can go watch that later. Numerous people have tried to reproduce them. And I think in the next slide, there's something about that, Miss Crystal. Oh, nope. But there is a guy, and I forget where he is from, but he attempted, first of all, he started by translating Vitruvius's passage on scorpions, and then he actually had the woodworking skills to build one, and he did. And I've linked him in the resources at the top of this presentation. So another way that we know so much about catapults is monuments. Trajan's column, which you see there, it's the tall column-shaped object there in the center. It was, of course, a triumphal column in Rome. It's built by the Emperor Trajan after his conquest of Dacia, just kind of, I don't know, northeast of Italy, and around 110 CE. The great thing about this monument, and the reason why so many warfare scholars want to look at it, is because it shows great details of how the Romans waged war. The structure itself is an engineering marvel. If you follow me on Twitter, I just posted just yesterday some drone footage that a museum commissioned that flies all the way around the column. The column is read kind of like a comic strip, starting at the bottom and spiraling all the way to the top. If you look at the very bottom of the structure, you will see a doorway. You can actually climb to the top of this monument and stand on that little balcony area below the statue with special permission. But this monument would have been very difficult to read. By ancient people, because they didn't have a drone. So let's go ahead and look at it in another way. Next slide, please. All right, so this is from that wonderful National Geographic article that I linked you to at the top. And it breaks down the different portions of the spiral story told about the conquest of Dacia. And you can see all these different things. And we're not going to go into this with great detail, but I just wanted to show you, this gives you kind of a better view of how it would have been read and how it was created. It would have been carved in situ. All right, next slide, please. So here is a detail of the column, and as you've probably guessed, it shows a scorpion or a ballista or some type of catapult that the men are working. And you can see it takes two of them to do it. All around them, you see circular objects, which are probably the shot for this catapult. So those are the things that they would have shot from it. Next slide. In this detail from the column, which is I just made it larger, you see that detail from the previous slide right in the center. But if you look over to the right, you see some more examples of a simple catapult. If you look at the guy who is standing with his legs kind of apart, he's got his left arm out away from him, and it looks like he's wearing something, a little pouch on his neck. And if you look carefully at the pouch, you'll see some tiny shot put. In his other hand, he's holding a slingshot. So these were some of the famous slingers that the Roman army employed. All right, next slide. So where do catapults come from? How did they start? As the name suggests, they came from ancient Greece and were developed to improve upon another weapon, which of course is the bow and arrows. It's a very simple, basic catapult. The first catapult was based on the gastrophetes, or belly bow, which you see there. You can see how the man on the right is kind of using it. He's got his arrows to put in it, slung over his shoulder as an archer would. Again, people have reproduced these quite successfully. So if you want to see a video of someone using one and firing one, you can just click the link there later. Next slide. And so this is a later version of a catapult developed by the Greeks called the oxyboles. Some of these are quite scary looking, almost like, I don't know, as you can see, they get bigger. There is the arrow used in this would have been, as you can tell, a very, very dangerous weapon that would have easily killed a person. Next slide. And so if you want to learn more about catapults, many different types and how they work, I highly recommend this man's video series. It's a great one of the great courses. Dr. Stephen Ressler, it's called Understanding Greek and Roman Technology. He talks about all forms of technology, but he does do an entire episode on catapults. And in this one particular episode, he talks about how the Romans did extensive studies on what size shot to use with each type of catapult. Okay, and he argues quite successfully that these size of shots actually helped develop mathematical formula that would have been easier if they had those formula to figure out what sizes they needed. They did it from trial and error, and that pushed mathematics to develop into formulae. So I thought that was really interesting, and you can read more about that at that link there later. But I highly recommend him. He is also on Twitter, and if you don't know anything about him, he's retired from the Army, used to teach at the Army Academy at West Point as a history instructor. But he has no real classical background other than what he has learned on his own. He's traveled extensively in the classical world and loves to talk about the Greeks and Romans. So definitely check him out. Next slide. All right, so eventually catapults developed into larger pieces. An example here called the onager. The onager in Latin means wild donkey, and it's thought that this object was called that because of the action of the arm. It supposedly reminded people of a donkey's back legs kicking. And we're actually going to postpone firing it until we go outside. So I'll just say, let's go to the next slide. So let's go ahead and see what you need to build. This is the list you'll need. So if you're just joining us and you would like to get these supplies, or you have them hanging around, I'll give you a moment to do that. Do y'all maybe want to do questions first and then we'll go fire? It's up to y'all. Just let me know, Miss Crystal.
Sorry, I can't talk and present at the same time.
It's okay.
So did anyone have any questions right now for Magister Roy? No? They're all being quiet. It's hard
Okay,
to...
that's okay. That's totally fine. I'll just talk about the onager then, my onager model. And what you can see here, it's just made of wood. This was from a model that someone actually gave me as a Christmas present. I don't know why, but maybe I do. And so this is, as you can see, the arm. And it is tensioned with this rope that you see here, which is actually controlled by these pins in the side. Now, the Romans probably would not have used rope, okay? They would have used animal sinew, which was very, very strong, but took a long time to process to create this. But this is the basic shape. An ancient one would probably have been on a cart so that it could have been moved into position where needed. It would have taken, we're not really sure, but it would have taken at least, 6, 7, 8 men to operate this thing. The shot alone, as you saw when I showed you this pictures from Israel, was gigantic. And so just having that available and to get it into position would have been a job for multiple people. These, of course, I had a question when I did this presentation for ETC, how the question was about, what was the question now that I was thinking I needed to tell y'all? What kind of damage did it do? Okay. So I have this little passage for y'all. This is from a book called The Roman War Machine. Of course, it's backwards for you, sorry. But it's The Roman War Machine by John Petty. I like to look at this when we do our warfare units. And here's what, this is from Josephus. So he wrote about the Romans' war against Israel. And he was a Jew himself. So this is him telling about what it sounded like when the Romans attacked a wall or a city with one of these onagers. He says, the force of the spear throwers was such that a single projectile ran through a row of men. And the momentum of the stones hurled by the engine carried away battlements and knocked off corners of towers. There is, in fact, no body of men that cannot be laid low to the last rank by the impact of these huge stones. The effectiveness of the engine can be gathered by incidents of that night. One of the men standing near Josephus on the rampart got in the line of fire and had his head knocked off by a stone, his skull being flung like a pebble from a sling more than 600 yards. Even more terrifying than the actual engines and their missiles was the rushing sound and the final crash. There was a constant thudding of dead bodies as they were thrown one after another from the rampart. Within the town rose the terrible shrieks of the women. The whole strip of ground that encircled the battlefield ran with blood, and it was possible to climb up the heap of corpses on the battlefield, on the battlements. The din was made the more terrifying by the echoes from the mountains around. So this is a good reminder that this is really a weapon, and this is not studying the Romans is fun, but you need to remember that they were, pretty serious, mean people that did a lot of conquering of innocent people that did not deserve that treatment. And this is one of the weapons they used for that. So, all right, so I'm going to show you all now before we go outside. Even though it is sunny right now, it is starting to rain. So I'm hoping that we'll be all right in a minute. But I'm going to go ahead and show y'all how to put this together. So I've got 5 tongue depressors. And I'm just going to stack those all up like so. Like this. All right. And then I'm going to take my rubber bands and I'm going to put the ends, I'm just wrapping it around the rubber band, the end of the tongue depressor, so that now it looks like this. And then I'm going to take another rubber band and do the same thing on the other end. I'm wrapping it, I don't know, 7, 8 times, maybe more. It doesn't have to be super tight. So now it looks like this. All right, next step is to take your remaining two tongue depressors, and you want to do it a little bit looser this time. And you know what I realized? I told y'all you needed 3 rubber bands, but you actually need 4. And somebody took my other rubber band. Don't worry, I have another one. So you should be able to do this. This should be pretty pliant. All right, let me grab another rubber band here. Next step, and this is the tricky part. So if you don't get it the first time, don't worry, I'll redo it. You're going to take your 5-stick bundle and stick it down as far as you can between those two. Because what you want to do is create some tension here. And it should be right in the center. All right, once you've done that, you might want to hold it like this, and that way you can get it maybe a little closer to your rubber bands. And then you're going to take your 4th rubber band, and this is kind of tricky, but you kind of just want to start wrapping it around to keep everything in check. So where eventually you're going to have it nicely crossed on all ends. See if I can get it this way. There's no real right or wrong way to do this. But at the end of it, you want there to be a nice crisscross on there. And you might, if you can, want to try to get at least one rubber band across this part too. So again, that gives you more tension because you're going to shoot it that way. So does anybody need me to redo that? This is kind of tricky. If not, I'm just going to go on.
If you need her to redo it, please type that in the chat box right now.
Yeah, I don't mind, y'all. Y'all are high school students, so this should be easier for you. I teach middle school, and this can be challenging. All right, if there's no repetition needed, I'm going to go to the next part, which is to make a basket. Okay, so this is going to be my loading basket. So cap from a milk container, tape. Now, if you're in the classroom, teachers, you might want to fire up the glue gun and actually glue it onto here. It doesn't really matter. But some students prefer the tape. They say that it's easier. And you're just going to tape it to either side. Doesn't really matter. But the important thing is to tape it evenly. You don't want it to be to the side. So try to make it as evenly as you can. All right, and that's what it should look like when you're done. And now our basket is ready. We can put our projectiles in there and shoot them. Okay. And now I'm going to show you what it looks like when we fire these in my class.
No one's saying that they need more time, so I'm hoping they're all good.
All righty. I'm going to take my supplies out. Let me grab, I sometimes like to do, let me see if I can grab this real quick before we go. Oh, you know what? I'm going to use Play-Doh. Play-Doh is a great thing that you can use. I'm taking my contraption over here, y'all. I'm going to grab some Play-Doh really quick. We normally use regular clay in my class, but the yellow, I think y'all will be able to see that. But I don't have any clay here. All right. So we are going to go out to my front yard. I'm going to go away for a second to rearrange my contraptions here. It is raining a little bit right now, but I think we're going to be all right. I'm also going to unplug my mic. So if you need me, this Crystal, just wave really loud.
I'll shout really loud then, or
Yeah. That's
maybe
good.
Molly could unmute her video if she needs.
Okay, and I don't know if y'all can see, but what I've done here, and this is something you can do at, oh my goodness, here comes a fire truck, y'all. Hope everybody's all right. Oh, and an ambulance. All right, so this is just specific to my front yard, but normally at my school, we have these large pavement structures at my school. So I usually assign a pavement structure to each student, and they can't leave that surface. Okay, so it's kind of recreating what it'd be like to have an actual honor. You couldn't really move it around during war. So they're stationed there, and then we do targets, and you can just print targets or you can make them yourself. I decided to go ahead and put some targets written in Roman numerals. So you can see here, I've got a 5. I hope you can see a 10, 100, and 1,000. Now, of course, I made those when it wasn't raining, so they're kind of they're a little bit faded now, but I hope you can see. All right, so let me know if y'all can see. I'm gonna fire some stuff now for y'all. So the first thing we're gonna fire is the onager. And y'all can see this, yeah. Y'all
I
see
would
that?
say yes, we can. Just because someone had a hot glue incident, I would say if you
Uh-oh.
are using hot glue right now, you can't use your catapult right now. You got to let it sit,
Yeah.
I think.
It won't take long though, y'all. All right, so I've also moved the catapult over a little bit because if on the major video here, the green icon, that's little microphone, gets in the way. So I've just moved it over a bit. I hope y'all can see it. All right, so we're going to start with a ping pong ball. And I'll just say this before I fire different things. If you're interested in shots used by the Romans, definitely go check out Vitruvius, Book 10 De Architectura. He talks about the different sizes of shot, the different weights of shot, and this makes an excellent scientific experiment if you really want to get the STEM in there. You can ask your students, or students, you can do this at home. You can try different weights of shot, and you can try different sizes and see which one you think works best. Of course, it depends on your catapult size, and it depends on lots of things. So we'll just start with the ping pong ball. I'm going to pull my arm back. I think y'all can see that. All right, so let's see if we can get, I'm going for 100 here. I'm in the way. I'm going to scoot to the other side.
You're actually okay. It's just we can't quite see it all being held down, so that's the problem.
Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. Here we go. All right, I can attest to it. It made it to 1,000, y'all. That's pretty good. All right, next, let's go ahead and choose a more dangerous projectile. We're going to use a rock. Okay, this is much heavier. It's also a little bit smaller. It got to 100. That's pretty good. It's pretty heavy. But of course, you can probably guess this one would have done much more damage because it's heavy. All right. So that is the onager. You can actually purchase these kits, I think, on Amazon. I really don't know where it came from, but I'm pretty sure you can find it. All right, so next I'm going to grab our homemade catapult and some Play-Doh. All right, now, teachers, students, you can shoot this any way you wish. We shoot it, I do different types of shot contests. We'll shoot it where, they have to hold it on the ground. I'll let them sometimes hold it like this, which is more of a action. It really doesn't matter. You can play around with it. All right, so I'm going to start with just a little bit of Play-Doh. And I'm going to make, unfortunately, this Play-Doh, it looks like it's kind of old. I hate to say it. I don't play with Play-Doh very much anymore. All right. Shot. Putting it in the basket. Can y'all see me, Crystal? Yes? Okay. All right, let's see what happens. Oh, wow. All right, it got to C. That's not bad. I didn't expect it to. Usually this catapult, which doesn't have a lot of tension, rubber band's there's not much tension. It doesn't go very far. So we did well today with the C. Now, that shot was kind of heavy because it was made of Play-Doh. So I'm going to go drop over here and get the ping pong ball.
While she's doing that, some of you are typing up questions, and that's great. We will ask the questions at the end.
Okay, I'm back with the ping pong ball, putting it in there. Teachers, just a tip. Ping pong balls are really annoying. So if you do this project, you might want to put some, rules and regulations in place about ping pong balls being returned because they are quite expensive. And you just want to make sure that, they don't disturb other teachers as you're using them. All right, so here we go. All right, so without the bounce, it got to 100. I think that's pretty good. All right, so that's our demonstration. I'm going to hop back inside my house now, out of the rain, so that we can talk about that. So I'll be with y'all back in just a second.
Oh, Ish. I think we have to avoid you and catapults.
Ish, did you like aim it at yourself? I know.
I once had a student who built well, he built a trebuchet. A lot of people ask me about trebuchets. I don't know what it is about trebuchets. Trebuchets are not really ancient Roman catapults. They're more, they're later. And he built one and he brought it to school. He was all excited. He was going to JCL convention. And he said, "Oh, Miss Roy, do you want to see how it shoots?" I'm like, "You know what? I don't shoot it because I don't want you to break it. I want you to have time to, I want it to be perfect when you get to convention and you have to shoot it." Can help himself. So he shot it and it broke. So make sure that your catapult works if you do this as a project for a JCL convention, and that it doesn't break before you have to actually shoot it. Advice. Pro tip.
And I think Molly, our state consul, our outgoing consul, is going to ask you the questions.
Yes.
Go ahead, Molly, whenever you're ready. I'll do my best to answer.
Okay, I think the first question is, what was the most widespread type of catapult used in the classic era?
I would say the Scorpion was up there because it was much smaller than the Onager, but both would have been used in a warfare situation. One's just much bigger, and therefore, it can do more damage, but more difficult to deal with because you've got to move it in a cart and it's tricky.
Right. How often would they need to tighten the rope on the onager?
That's a great question. I would think probably after every battle. I think they would probably, do a lot of maintenance on these things almost daily. They would have had to.
Can you do that kind of catapult with string? So I think, Miss Mulder, do you mean like the little one with the popsicle sticks?
Yeah, the little one with the popsicle sticks. Would string give you more tension?
I guess it would depend on the amount of string and how, the other one, I left it outside, but the Onager model I have depends on twisting, which is torsion action. So if you could get some way to torsion it, to twist it, it might. But as for tying it, I don't know. I think that would be not as effective.
Those are all the questions I see right now. I don't know if anyone else will think of some
Okay.
in the next minute or so.
Okay.
Well, I do see that Ish had an incident where she accidentally hit herself instead of her brother, so she was wondering if she did something wrong with it. So I don't know.
Well, this is a good point. A lot of people ask me, well, this is just kid stuff. I don't want to play with this kind of stuff. I want to build the real stuff. Well, the problem is the real stuff is really dangerous. And I really don't want to kill anyone, especially one of my students, because that would be really, really bad. So for weapons, we don't build real weapons. We're not allowed to have them at school. And my principal would be really upset with me if we did. So that's why we use models. You can still get, for the teachers out there, you can still get a lot of learning, STEM learning especially, from a model. It doesn't have to be the real size thing. Wait, there was something that question reminded me of something I wanted to tell y'all, and now I can't remember. I'm sorry, but I might think of it later.
There's another question. Her name's Kylie. She's a consul at her Latin club at college, and she asked if she's allowed to use this video to send to her Latin club at college, because she felt like they struggle with things to do every day, like at their meetings. So it'd be a nice activity.
Sure, of course. And if they have questions about other activities, I have a whole year's worth of this.
How accurate were the catapults, and how bad, or how had the Romans improved it over time?
I'm sure, if you read that 10th book of Vitruvius about all the different sizes of the shot, they were constantly improving, I'm sure every battle they would make tweaks and improvements to the technology.
Type your questions on.
So what did y'all think about my project? That's what reminded me of it. Let me hop over here and grab my my catapult to show y'all something one last thing. Let's see, here it is. So when we actually use these for we don't use these for the Maker Faire, but we use these for when the 5th graders visit our school, we make these with them. Literally, it takes 5 minutes. And on the back of the catapult, we stick a sticker that says, "Study Roman Technology at Glasgow Middle." So they get to take that with them, and it has our name on the back of it. So super simple, y'all. Y'all can do this.
Ish, do you want to show? Wait, here's a question. Were medieval catapults the same as the classical ones, or were there any major improvements / changes?
Yes, they were very similar because, a catapult is just something that throws something at something. So it's not that different. But yes, we've got the trebuchet, which was developed later, depending on who you read and what the research says, maybe in medieval times. The trebuchet had more power because it had this swinging basket thing on it, which could get a shot further. And yes, they just kept developing it more and more as time went.
Okay. The next question is, considering how quickly we could build this catapult, how long did the Romans typically take to build a catapult?
I would think the longest part of the process would have been the animal sinew, which was used in, an onager, as well as a scorpion and a ballista, to get strong torsion, that twisting motion that is super important for the operation of a catapult. It would take a long time for that to process, to dry out properly to where it could be twisted and used and have tension in it.
I don't see any more questions right now. Oh, never mind. Okay, so Ish said she thought it was pretty fun. I thought it was pretty fun too.
Okay, good. I'm glad y'all enjoyed it. It's super simple.
So she says, I believe that in medieval times they still kept using catapults. So why do you think the concept of catapults survived, even though during the times there were a sort of drift from Roman themes?
It was just solid weaponry. It worked. I mean, it's part of what we call siege weaponry, right? When you are trying, you think about just the basic concept of a town or a city that has a wall around it. If the Romans are going to get you, you've got to get through that wall. They're going to either starve you out, right? Which they did a lot of as well, or they're going to have to break that wall down. They're going to have to besiege the town. And all of these things, and there are other weapons that did this, right? They had siege towers, they had rammers. This was what it was for. And if you know that basic concept of siege warfare, then think about every medieval town that came after. Same thing. They had a wall around it. And that same type of weaponry was needed to get through a wall.
Okay, so can everyone turn on their video to show if they built one? And we could take a photo.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Oh, look at that.
This is mine.
That's cool. All right.
Ish, where's yours? I know you made one.
Yeah, Ish, you want to see yours?
Miss Kubicek, do you want to take that picture?
show us your burn too. Show us your battle scar.
Ish still here?
I don't see too many people turning on their cameras right now for me to show it. So if you've got one,
Well, maybe it's just a few people that were able to do it. So
yeah,
that's
true.
awesome. Thank you.
Again, Mrs. Jones. Or never mind, it'll be on the video. Oh, video, I guess. But if you make one, then take a picture.
That's okay, Emmanuel.
Yeah, if you make one, take a picture and tag NJJCL. What's our Twitter or
Yeah,
Instagram?
tell me your Twitter. I'll follow y'all.
Good question. That one might just be.
I will peep your page.
Or it's NJJCL_.
Okay.
So, and then we could let Magistra Roy know about that.
Hey, thank you so
Tag
much.
me. Thank y'all for having me. It was a pleasure. Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. And you actually have a session coming up this week, don't you, Magistra?
I do. Oh, it's a good one. It's going to be about the Latin and mythology in Harry Potter.
Ooh.
And then we have a couple of other sessions planned. I think they're going to be in June, but the first one in June, I think, is going to be on makeup, Roman makeup. So I'll talk a little bit about the classical sources for Roman makeup. And then I think Magistra D is going to be doing her makeup in Roman style, and we get to watch. So that's going to be awesome. And then Magistra Kubicek and D decided that we needed to do a volcano. So the last one I think we're going to do is about Pompeii, about Vesuvius. And then we're going to explode a massive volcano. I brought home this gigantic PVC pipe from my classroom is going to be epic. It's going to be classic, bougie, ratchet. I'm just telling y'all.
I told Mickey Sherroy we need to have a volcano explosion. That's a good way to do the
Exactly.
summer.
That's the way to end it.
Oh, Ish, well, you'll have to build a new one. That's all. This is something we might even be able to do with the Little Pioneers.
Oh, yay, Michael, look, that's awesome. Okay,
Yay.
cool.
Thanks.
Yay, it worked.
Nice.
Thank you again.
Y'all are welcome.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone who
Well, Late.
participated in NJJCL today.
I'll see the rest of y'all.
Well, say.